You never really know how heavy a sentence is until you're the one who has to say it out loud. Some words sound simple, almost harmless, but once spoken, they can change everything. This story is about one of those moments. A moment where I had to choose between telling my mother the truth or protecting her from it. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was saving her. But when I said those words, "We're leaving tomorrow, Mom. I sold your beach house," I watched the light in her eyes fade. And what she didn't know was that I wasn't taking her home away. I was trying to save her life. The beach house had been part of our family for as long as I could remember. It wasn't just a house. It was a living memory, standing quietly by the shore, watching decades of our lives pass by. White wooden walls, worn smooth by years of wind and salt. Faded blue shutters that creaked every time the breeze picked up. A long porch that always smelled like the ocean, old wood. And something else, something nostalgic. The kind of place where time didn't rush you, where it slowed down, almost respectfully, as if it knew how much history it was holding. My mom, Linda, loved that house more than anything in the world. She and my dad bought it when they were young and hopeful, before life became heavy, before responsibilities piled up. Before illness and loss found their way into our family. Back then, the house was full of noise, music playing through open windows, laughter echoing from room to room, and the sound of my parents arguing playfully over burnt dinners and misplaced keys. That house was where they raised me, where I learned to walk across sandy floors, where summers were spent barefoot, skin sunburned, hair tangled from swimming all day. We'd sit on the porch in the evenings, watching the sky slowly turn orange and pink, pretending the day would never end. After my dad passed away, everything changed. The house stopped being just a home. It became my mother's anchor. The one thing that kept her grounded when everything else felt like it was slipping away. Every corner of that place held a piece of him, his chair by the window, his old fishing gear in the garage. The way he used to stand on the porch every evening, staring out at the water in silence. She refused to leave. Even when storms started tearing at the foundation and flooding the lower rooms. Even when the stairs became harder for her to climb, each step slower than the last. Even when her coughing grew worse every year, deep and painful, echoing through the house late at night. Doctors warned her. Neighbors worried. I begged her. But she would always shake her head and say the same thing. This house is the only thing I have left of him. And every time she said it, I felt helpless. Because how do you argue with grief? How do you ask someone to let go of the place where their love still feels alive? So I never argued. I stayed quiet. I watched. And I let the house hold her. Even as I began to fear that one day, it might take her with it. That afternoon, we were sitting on the porch like we had done 1,000 times before. The ocean stretched endlessly in front of us, calm and familiar, its waves rolling in with a soft, steady rhythm. The air smelled like salt and sun-warmed wood. A gentle breeze moved through the porch, lifting the edges of the old curtains and brushing against our skin like a quiet reminder of how many years had passed in that very spot. Mom sat in her favorite chair, holding her tea with both hands. She stared out at the water, lost in thought, as if she were speaking to someone only she could see. I knew that look. She wore it whenever she missed my dad the most. I stood behind her for a long moment, watching her shoulders rise and fall with each breath. My heart pounded in my chest. I'd practiced this conversation in my head 100 times. But standing there, with the ocean in front of us and memories all around, every word felt heavier than I imagined. Mom, I said finally, my voice quieter than I meant it to be. We need to talk. She smiled faintly, still looking at the horizon. That never sounds good, she said, almost teasing. I forced a small laugh, trying to hide the tension tightening my chest. We're leaving tomorrow. She took a slow sip of her tea and nodded, as if I'd just told her we were going to the grocery store. Okay, she said calmly. For how long? My throat went dry. I could hear the waves crashing below us. I could hear my own heartbeat. I could feel the weight of everything I was about to destroy with one sentence. I sold the beach house. Time stopped. Her cup froze halfway to her lips. The faint smile on her face disappeared, replaced by a look I'll never forget. Confusion first, then disbelief. And finally a quiet kind of pain that cut deeper than anger ever could. You... what? She whispered, as if saying it any louder would make it real. I sold it, I said again, my voice shaking now. The house is sold. She turned slowly in her chair, staring up at me with wide eyes, like she was trying to recognize the person standing in front of her. Michael, she said softly, why would you do that? I opened my mouth, then closed it. Because how do you explain something like this? How do you tell your mother that the place she loves most is also the place that's hurting her? How do you put into words a truth that feels like betrayal? I didn't answer right away. Because the truth wasn't something you just say out loud. It was something you survived. She stood up slowly, her hands trembling as she pushed herself out of the chair. For a moment, it looked like she might lose her balance. I stepped forward instinctively, but she waved me off, needing the strength to stand on her own. This house is my life, she said, her voice breaking. Your father's life. She gestured around us, at the porch, the walls, the ocean beyond. Every memory I have left of him lives here. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. You had no right, she continued, her voice sharper now. No right to take this away from me. I wanted to scream that I did it for her. I wanted to tell her about the hospital, the tests, the warnings. I wanted to explain that every decision I made came from fear of losing her. But I couldn't. Instead, I stood there in silence, watching my mother feel betrayed by the person she trusted most. Watching her look at me like I was a stranger. And that hurt more than anything she could have said. I thought you understood, she whispered, her voice suddenly small. Fragile. I thought you knew how much this place means to me. I do, I said softly, my chest tight. More than you know. But she didn't know. She didn't know that I'd spent sleepless nights staring at medical reports. She didn't know how many times I'd stood outside her bedroom door, listening to her cough and wondering if tonight would be the night something went wrong. She didn't know that every signature I'd written on those papers felt like tearing a piece of my own heart out. She didn't know the truth. Not yet. And as I stood there, surrounded by the memories we were about to leave behind, I wondered if telling her would heal the damage, or break us even more. 3 months earlier, everything almost ended. My mom had been alone in the kitchen, the same kitchen where she'd cooked countless meals for our family. One moment she was standing at the counter, and the next, her body gave out. She collapsed hard against the floor, the sound echoing through the empty house. No one was there to help her. No one. Except a neighbor who happened to be walking by at the exact right moment. They heard the crash. They knocked. They called her name. And when there was no answer, they called 911. If they hadn't been there, she wouldn't have survived. I didn't find out until I was standing in a hospital hallway, staring at white walls that felt colder than anything I'd ever known. Machines beeped in the background. The smell of disinfectant filled the air, and my heart wouldn't stop pounding. After the doctors stabilized her, one of them pulled me aside. Your mother's lungs are weak, he said calmly, but firmly. Years of damp air, mold exposure, and humidity have done real damage. I asked him what we could do. He didn't hesitate. The house is accelerating it, he said. If she stays there, it will get worse. Much worse. Then he looked me straight in the eyes. No sympathy, no softness. Just truth. She can't stay there. That single sentence changed everything. I stood there long after he walked away, replaying his words over and over in my head. I knew my mom. If I told her the truth right then, she'd refuse to leave. She'd argue. She'd say she was fine. She'd choose memories over medicine, comfort over survival. And she'd do it with a smile. So I made the hardest decision of my life. I handled everything quietly. The inspections, the paperwork, the buyer. I read every line twice, my hands shaking as I signed my name. Every signature felt like a betrayal. Every phone call felt like I was erasing a piece of our past. Guilt followed me everywhere. I felt it in the middle of the night. I felt it when I watched her sit on the porch, breathing a little harder every day. I felt it every time she smiled at me, trusting me completely. I didn't sell the house because I wanted to. I sold it because I was terrified. Terrified of losing her. Terrified of walking into that house one day and finding her alone on the floor again. Terrified that if I waited any longer, I wouldn't get another chance. And now, standing in front of her, watching her heart break, I wondered if saving her life was going to cost me our relationship. Standing there, watching my mother cry, something inside me finally broke. I couldn't keep carrying the silence anymore. The weight of it was crushing me. Every tear that fell from her eyes felt like another reminder that I had let her believe the worst about me. So I told her everything. I told her about the night she collapsed in the kitchen. About the neighbor who heard the crash. About the ambulance lights flashing in the dark. About the hospital room filled with machines and fear. I told her about the tests, the scans, the words the doctors used when they thought she couldn't hear them. This house is killing you, I said, my voice shaking as tears streamed down my face. The damp air, the mold, it's destroying your lungs. And I couldn't just stand by and watch that happen. She didn't respond. She didn't argue. She didn't interrupt. She slowly sat down, as if her body suddenly felt heavier than before. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders trembling. For a long time, she just stayed like that, breathing softly, absorbing the truth. The only sound around us was the ocean. The same ocean that had given us so many beautiful memories now whispered gently in the background, as if it, too, was listening. Minutes passed. Then, in a voice so quiet it almost disappeared into the wind, she said, I thought you betrayed me. My heart shattered. I knelt down in front of her, lowering myself so she wouldn't have to look up at me. I was terrified you'd hate me, I admitted. I was scared that if I told you, you'd refuse to leave. And I couldn't lose you, Mom. I just couldn't. She slowly reached out and took my hand. Her grip was weak, but certain. You didn't sell my home, she said softly, tears still on her cheeks. You saved my life. In that moment, everything, the anger, the guilt, the fear, finally loosened its grip on my heart. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. We left the next morning, just after sunrise. The house was quiet, unusually still, as if it already knew this was goodbye. The light coming through the windows felt softer than usual, almost careful. My mom moved slowly from room to room, her fingers brushing against the walls as she passed, memorizing their texture one last time. She paused at the doorframe in the hallway, the one where my dad had marked my height every year as a child. Her hand rested there for a moment, lingering, before she let out a small breath and smiled sadly. Then she walked to the window in the living room. The same window where my dad used to stand every evening, coffee in hand, staring out at the ocean without saying a word. She stood there quietly, just like he used to, letting the memory sit with her. When she finally turned away, she nodded to herself. We locked the door together. We moved her closer to me, to a small, clean house tucked into a quiet neighborhood. No stairs to climb. No damp air clinging to the walls. Just open windows, fresh air, and sunlight filling every room. At first, everything felt unfamiliar. She still misses the ocean. She still talks about the sound of the waves. She still dreams about that porch. But now, she's breathing better. Her coughing has eased. Her steps are steadier. Her laughter comes easier, and more often. Some evenings, we sit outside and watch the sky change colors. And I see the same peace on her face that she used to find by the sea. The house may be gone, but my mom is still here. And this time, she's not just surviving. She's living. Love isn't always soft. Sometimes, love is heavy. Sometimes, it asks you to carry guilt in silence. Sometimes, it forces you to make decisions that no one else will understand. Love doesn't always look kind in the moment. Sometimes, it looks like being misunderstood. Sometimes, it looks like standing alone with a choice you never wanted to make. And sometimes, it looks like breaking someone's heart, just to save it. I lost the house. I lost the place where my childhood lived. The place where my parents laughed. The place where memories were built into the walls. But I didn't lose my mother. And if I had to choose between memories and her life, I would make the same choice every single time. If I had to do it again, I would. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And tell me in the comments, what would you have done?